Hello and welcome to the Data Engineering Podcast, the show about modern data management. When you're ready to build your next pipeline and want to test out the projects you hear about on the show, you'll need somewhere to deploy it, so check out our friends over at Linode. With their managed Kubernetes platform, it's now even easier to deploy and scale your workflows, or try out the latest Helm charts from tools like Pulsar, Pachyderm, and Dagster. With simple pricing, fast networking, object storage, and worldwide data centers, you've got everything you need to run a bulletproof data platform. Go to dataengineeringpodcast.com/Linode today, that's Linode, and get a $100 credit to try out a Kubernetes cluster of your own. And don't forget to thank them for their continued support of this show. This episode is brought to you by Acryl Data, the company behind DataHub, the leading developer-friendly data catalog for the modern data stack. Open-source DataHub is running in production at several companies like Peloton, Optum, Udemy, Zynga, and others. Acryl Data provides DataHub as an easy-to-consume SaaS product, which has been adopted by several companies. Sign up for the SaaS today at dataengineeringpodcast.com/Acryl. That's ACRYL.
Your host is Tobias Macy, and today I'm interviewing Doron, Porat, and Liran, Yogev about their experiences designing and implementing a self-serve data platform at Yotpo. So, Doron, can you start by introducing yourself?
Sure. Hi. My name is Doron. I work at Yotpo for about 5-6 years now, and I manage the data infra group. Liran is my manager. And what we do in the infra group is basically build data infrastructure to self-serve all the rest of data consumers and producers in Yotpo around the platform.
And Liran, how about yourself?
I lead the domain of platform engineering at Yotpo. So what part of it is data infrastructure, another part is backend infrastructure and front-end infrastructure. So my goal in life is increasing the velocity of everyone that's working at Yotpo, or everything that's internal, just making the company move faster. So I do it in these three domains.
Going back to you, Doron, do you remember how you first got involved working in the area of data?
Yes, I was very young. I think data is basically everything I did in my adulthood. I started off as a BI developer in a services company, and quite fast I became a project manager, and I started building data warehouses for different organizations, mostly startup companies. So I got to see different MPP databases and all what was hot back then. I won't say how back then it was, but it was a while ago.
You can name drop things from the past. It's okay, I think.
Yeah, like Exasol and Greenplum and things that no one uses anymore. And then actually Yotpo was the last customer I arrived at. So I came to Yotpo to build the first data warehouse. As I said, that was probably 6 and something years ago. In Yotpo, I had this transformation where something that always bothered me working in this field, where we were building data warehouses, and I felt like what we were building is something that can last for a year or 2 or 3 years. It really depends on the people that build it and how much knowledge they have, and super coupled to certain technology and these big black boxes and a lot of managed services and not enough know-how inside the teams, and a lot of locked up business logic and everything entangled together. And what we basically did in Yotpo is create this platform that's built to scale and a very robust architecture that today I'm very proud of. And one of the main principles that lead us building this platform is having this architecture that everything is very, how do we call it, interchangeable, right? You can take stuff out and in and replace certain services and capabilities within a platform without having to break everything and start all over again, which is something that I really hated to see from the side.
Yeah, I think we're so into not being vendor locked that we do everything in our power to reduce that.
Too scared from vendor locking.
Probably too scared. Yeah, I think that would probably help if we'd been a bit more.
Yeah.
And Liran, do you remember how you first got started working in data?
Part of my story is Doron's story. We've been working together for the last 6 years, but I actually started from I developed as a full stack. I built full stack products at a network security company. And then I just got offered a job of running a big data team. And I was so intrigued by doing something that I have no idea what it is. I just came here and I was fascinated by big data and all the different infrastructure, working with Spark and doing distributed calculations. It was so great and so interesting. And I think I got sucked into it, and I'm hooked right now. So in the last couple of years, I dabbled a bit in ML engineering and in data infrastructure, and that's what I've been doing. And then their own stories come into play. So yeah, we have the same. That's how I started.
And so that brings us to the topic at hand for today, which is the work that you've been doing recently to either evolve or rebuild the architecture of your data platform. And before we get too far into that, I'm wondering if you can just start by describing a bit about what it is that Yotpo does and some of the roles that data plays across the organization.
Yotpo is basically a marketing platform for e-commerce businesses. So as part of the platform, we offer various products that give all the solutions that the marketer needs. It starts with content generation. It can be reviews or videos or pictures or whatever, communication channels, loyalty programs, referrals, and basically every solution you can think of to drive conversion and keep customers coming in. And so the data that we have in Yotpo, it varies from whether it's B2C data coming from the websites where Yotpo is implemented and serves, B2B data where we have the product information coming from the users of Yotpo, like the admins. And then we have all the applicative data.
Yeah, we have a lot of data, I think, coming from actual services. I think for me, in general, the biggest challenge here was this type of data, because it's I think we have a data that's more event streams. I think it's a bit easier to work with data platforms, and in general, there's a lot of technologies around events. But when you're talking about data that's being constantly updated, so think about relational databases. We have hundreds of microservices with their own databases, and everything is interconnected somehow.
Yeah, it's a big part of the challenge. We also have all those third party.
Yeah, we have business data, that data from Salesforce.
Once you have all of this data available, what are some of the ways that it's being used in the organization as far as driving value from that? Is it being used for machine learning use cases? Is it largely for business intelligence and informing some of the sort of road mapping for the organization? Is it doing a lot of analytics engineering or embedding analytics into customer experiences? Just curious to talk through some of those use cases.
Everything,
yes,
yeah.
You said,
yes to everything.
Do you work with Yotpo? Yeah.
Yeah, I think our data platform is being utilized by a lot of people.
Hundreds of people.
Yeah, I think we just talked about it before. We have I think around 500 users to our data platform, which they're working directly on top of the data lake, mostly using Databricks or some other tools, and they're doing a lot of different things with it. So we have supporting engineers that are doing it, they're using it to understand their customers' data or help solve bugs or whatever is coming from their customers. We have analytics there that are trying to understand how the organization can work better, or just give their managers a better view of the business. We
Solution engineers building tools to help customers on top of the data platform.
Yeah, we have actually R&Ds using the same data platform to create features which they find hard to do using their own platforms, so they can use
offload. To
offload stuff that are mostly pretty hard, doing with microservices or event driven architectures. Who else?
BI, lots of BI.
Yeah. And then, of course, data science, which is quite a heavy user of our data platform. So they use it as well.
And B2B also.
Yeah, we're doing embedded analytics. Yes. Yeah, you mentioned that as well. Yeah, I think that's a very interesting use case for us. I think that was because in the past, this was a really interesting project, because in the past, it was part of the product. So the product had to be in charge of B2B analytics. So they had to generate the data, create the API on top of it, create the dashboards. And what happened at some point was it became such an expensive task to do that we just stopped adding dashboards to our customers. I think that happens to a lot of organizations, right?
And time to market was also crazy. It took 6-8 months to deliver a dashboard.
Yeah, because they wanted the perfect UI. And data engineering is difficult when you have to do on the application side. But when you have big data systems, it's become so easy because data is so accessible, and it's really easy to join and do the different aggregations on huge data sets. So then we got this task of making this task faster, and we created a platform that uses the data lake, Snowflake, and Looker. And basically, then they just embed Looker inside our product, and now they can create dashboards within days instead of months. So that's a really cool use case, I guess, for a data platform today.
And what is the size and structure of the team that you have who are building and supporting this platform, particularly in relation to the size of the end consumers? You said you have on the order of 500 people who are actually taking advantage of that platform.
Basically, up until last September, I think the biggest the team was 5 people. It's not, I know. It was 5 people at most.
Yeah.
And then we started a new team, very innovative team, back in September. So that's 3 more people. That's us.
But in general, data group that Doron is in charge of is doing infrastructure only. Like they're not actually generating data assets. Like I would say like that's how we want to do it. Like they're still in charge of a few of them, but just like legacy ones. But so they are only about like the users or the consumers of data or the producers of data. So they treat with everything that's how do you ingest data into the system? How do you extract it? How do you create like transformations? How do you govern the data? So there's also outside, there's like a BI dev team that's not part of the group. They're also part of the ecosystem. And we are all about like the self-service part of the platform. Like we want to engage with other users and let them create the data assets and let them use it. And so that's what we are investing a lot in. It's making it very easy to use.
And you mentioned that one of the catalysts for embarking on this project of reimagining what your data platform architecture was going to look like was the fact that you had these requests for new dashboards that would take weeks or months to deliver. And I'm wondering if you can talk through what the state of the architecture looked like at that point before you went and reimagined it and rebuilt it.
The largest catalyst, I think, for the data platform was at around, I think, a couple of years ago when we found out that, every company starts with a monolith, right? So all the data is there. It's very easily accessible. And at some point, the company grows to a size where it needs to have like microservices or serverless function, and data is starting to become like not centralized anymore. And that's where we came in, and the people started to wonder, how do we work with the data? Like the data is decentralized, it's everywhere. How do we join between it? How do like support engineer? How do analysts work on top of it? So, classically there was like these data warehouses that they, push data into it. But then we kind of like thought about, wait, why don't we keep all that data somewhere centralized, which is the data lake, and utilize it and give all of our users access to this data to easily transform it or just do whatever they want with it.
In real time.
Yeah, in real time. Yeah, we can talk about it later, I guess, like how this part works. But like that was, I think, like a game changer for the company.
I think that like one thing that we didn't get to mention is I think before this happened, we started building this platform. We were very proud of it, but we didn't have like many use cases running on top of it. And we were basically building our own data pipelines. But we have this open source project called Metorico, and that's basically like an ETL framework that we wrote inside Yotpo to enable non-data developers to build their own data pipelines based on Spark. And then you can deploy it on whatever cluster orchestration that you have. So we had this in place and we were playing with building our own stuff and doing our own thing. And once we had a solution for what Liran described, it was really about being like in the right place at the right time. Everything exploded. Like everyone got to a point where they needed us and they wanted us everywhere. And yeah, it was actually like a real turning point. I think things drastically changed from there. Oh, and the reason that I talked about Metorico is that we had this in place. So we had like the infrastructure to enable people to build pipelines on top of this data. And then we suddenly had all this data from all the services in real time in a data lake. And then, whoa, it's like a playground. That's cool. You can build tons of stuff and everything is there. So
in terms of the overall effort to build this new data platform and empower all of your end users to be self-service and unlock the potential value of the data and allow them to explore it, I'm wondering what the sort of early stages of that evolution looked like. What were some of the initial steps that you took down that path? Was it a matter of let's just throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and see what sticks and experiment? Or was it a very sort of disciplined, let's plan everything out and end to end and figure out what are all the interconnection points? Or is it somewhere in between?
Definitely not the second one. No, it's not us. No, it was a complete chaos. Like, and I think we went back and forth so many times with our architectures, and we still do. Like, Doron talked about Metorico. Metorico is being used at Yotpo. We have hundreds of data pipelines used, and we're about to kill it right now. Like, they don't really know it yet, but we have a new project called Yoda that's coming up, and that's going to replace it. It's going to be really, really great. It's based on top of dbt. We see like as the future of data modeling.
It's better than.
It's much better than Metorico, and has a better approach to data modeling. But we can talk about it like the very beginning where we have like the event data, which was always basically from the day it was born, it was streamed to the data lake. Then, I don't think it was the data lake, it's just S3.
No, S3 CSV files, no one touched it.
Yeah, with Parquet files and just like...
CSVs.
Yeah, and CSVs? Okay. Later on, we had to add Hive at some point because we needed like a catalog. I think most of the company... Yeah, what?
I think Hive is a really nice example because I remember when we started working, we didn't have a Metastore. And then we would load Parquet files. And if you wanted to use this Parquet file, you would need to like load it. So you load the path and you need to know where the data is.
Yeah, it
and
sounds
only we
ridiculous.
knew what the paths are. So you
Yes.
had to ask someone from data engineering, where is this data?
But at that point, when we talked to people like from the industry about like Hive Metastore, was still like not being utilized like from a lot of like different companies, like very successful companies. Like, whoa, you have a catalog. Wow, that's it. And it was like once we started using it, like, how did we work with? That's so stupid. Like what we did before it. So I think like we started off with like loading data from our applicative databases by using like Spark loaders, which were basically pulling all the data on a daily basis or an hourly basis.
Select star.
Yeah, doing select star from our operational databases, pushing it to data lake, and then people could join and create the data pipelines. So that was not really fresh, right? So we had to
and costly also.
Yeah, costly on
replicas and
on the operational databases, and of course on the loading process, and of course Airflow there in the middle doing a lot of its Airflow stuff, which not really great.
He doesn't like.
No, I'm not a fan of Airflow.
I personally have not had to go down the path of Airflow. I was fortunate enough to come in at the second generation stage, and so I've actually started my platform fresh with Dagster, so for what that's worth.
Oh, nice. Okay. Yes, much better. I wanted to start with Prefect, by the way. But
you still do.
Yeah, I still do.
We're
by the way,
I'm heavily in Airflow, keep investing in Airflow.
Yeah, but now actually we moved from, managing your Airflow and doing like a lot of stuff and people working on it and not enjoying it to having like an auto-generated Airflow. Like that's where we are right now. So our Airflow is becoming like this, just like a scheduler, like all the DUGs are auto-generated. So no one is actually aware of the Airflow. Yeah. So as long as it's working, I don't really care anymore. It's okay, right? So it started out with loaders and without a Metastore. Then we added Metastore, and then we switched the loaders to CDC. We started working with CDC, which was like a huge revolution for us. Like, of course, an operational nightmare, by the way. Still does. Like right now, we added like a lot of self-service around it. So like the Debezium works well, and we have like processes to restart things and like these things that are not really built in Debezium, which is like there's like a lot of problems with that tool. So we worked around it for a very long time. Okay, so Debezium just gets us to the Kafka, right? So it just gets us from the applicative databases or the MySQLs and stuff into Kafka, but then we need to get to the data lake. So we started our own. There's also a blog post about it. We used Metorico to write with Hudi format to the data lake, doing upserts.
Horrible times.
Yes. These
horrible times.
Yes. It was a very, very tough time for us.
Intensive.
Very intensive. It was very costly, did not work well, did not scale well. Hudi is not a great format. It was not highly supported by like engines around it. We had a lot of trouble with it. And then at some point we're just way too deep into this. We need to change. And we started using Upsolver to do our upserts. I think a year later became like a very successful project. And right now, like, we have thousands of tables that are being streamed at less than 1 minute freshness to the data lake with upserts and being queried by Spark. Or before that, we had also Presto. Like everything works really, really well. And people are getting like really, really great query performance and ingestion speed.
I think that like basically the way we work is we have these cycles where we like have this objective that we want to push. And then we do some research and then we decide what we want to go for. We implement the technology, then we build a self-service around it. We had these cycles ever since we started the data platform. And like I said in the beginning, because it is so interchangeable. I don't know if interchangeable is even the right word.
Good, right?
Because it's built the way it's built. So we just attack every time a different part of the platform. And like the thing is that we have to make sure that everything plays well together. And because we live in a data lake and because we heavily rely on Spark, and we use Hive Metastore. So we have a few like anchors that we need to like build every solution that we bring in around these anchors. But all of those are pretty like standard.
But also like adding to that, like I think one of the really good decisions that we made was like concentrating on a single query engine for our data lake. At some point, yeah. Like we had at some point like both Presto and Spark, and it just became so complicated handling both of those at the same time, like because like they do have nuances, and Presto for us was not really that great. Like it was not as fault tolerant as Spark. It was not really dealing great with like memory stuff. So like at some point, like, okay, we are only using Spark. That's the only way to get to the data lake. If you want to push it somewhere else, you have to use Spark to move it from the data lake to somewhere else. So we do use Snowflake like a lot for like these dashboards. We plan to use it even further. We plan to use like Rockset or Druid for like these real-time analytics part. But it's all based on like a source of truth, which is the data lake in S3, and then Spark on top of it. So that's how we roll.
RudderStack helps you build a customer data platform on your warehouse or data lake. Instead of trapping data in a black box, they enable you to easily collect customer data from the entire stack and build an identity graph on your warehouse, giving you full visibility and control. Their SDKs make event streaming from any app or website easy, and their state-of-the-art reverse ETL pipelines enable you to send enriched data to any cloud tool. Sign up for free, or just get the free t-shirt for being a listener of the Data Engineering Podcast at dataengineeringpodcast.com/rudder.
As you have been going through these different iterations of development and discovery and optimization, what have been the sort of guiding forces or the key metrics that you're trying to optimize for in terms of the overall capabilities of the platform?
I think those also changed over time, but I think that, first you just wanted to work, right? To get something working. Yeah, but today, I don't know if it's anything special, but today we are super focused on self-service, like how self-service this solution can be, because we really don't want to silo stuff around our teams. It has to be something that's applicable for other teams to work with. Another thing would be cost and performance.
For self-service, I think we are always like, we have like this motto, like an infra as a product, and we like treat it very seriously. Like we don't look at our customers, which are like developers or BI devs or like anyone that's using the platform. When we think about them, like we're trying to sell them a product, right? We need to make sure that they are successful with using the platform. And with that in mind, we always think like, okay, so maybe we didn't really document it well. Maybe it's not really easy to use. Maybe there's not enough tooling around. Maybe it was like, it's too complicated to like, they had to copy a lot of stuff. Or they have to like, it should be really easy. Like we need to make big data or like data analytics simple for them. So that's like a really important part. And the other part is like, I think Doron mentioned, so cost and performance. Like, so we're really into like, and those, by the way, work together, right? Performance and cost, like they do have like a lot of correlation between them. But we always look at like query performance. We really monitor it quite closely to see that people are getting like normal times for their whatever it is, like data pipelines, or just they're normally just querying the data ad hoc, like with their like Databricks clusters. So we're really into like making sure that the things are like, proper performance, and cost is something that we're really heavily monitoring, but also we're working a lot on moving the ownership to like the teams so they can monitor it by themselves. So it's all about the self-service, like even the cost and the performance, like we want to move it to so they can use, but we need to digest it in a way that they can understand and they can actually do something about it. Like telling them, oh, you have too much memory in your Spark cluster. Like, what will they do with it? Can you use auto scaling to help them? Can we do like auto optimizations for them? Can we maybe send them some automated message like saying, oh, your pipeline is very, it's time consuming or it's wasting a lot of resources that you really need. Like, how can we automate like our communication with them? And also trying to reduce like that. We have like a contact data channel where they can ask like questions. We want to reduce like the number of questions that they're asking because it's very time consuming for us. And then we don't get to do like this crazy infrastructures. Yeah.
Now that I think about it, there's like another thing. There's this notion of like a cognitive load, right? For people interacting with the platform. That's one side where we want to make everything self-service and very like low hanging for them to use and to understand. And on the other hand, we have like the cognitive load for data infrastructure engineers too, because working in an environment where we have so many services, so many responsibilities, so many context switches, unlike any other team, I think aside from like DevOps teams, probably it's like the most similar. Another thing would be, so is this technology mature enough for us to handle at this point in time where we have this fire and this fire going on and we have like so many stuff going. So it's another thing like to keep the developers happy on both sides of the platform, right?
You mentioned cost a few times as being one of the motivating factors in the design and the implementation and the tool selection. And that can often be something that's very difficult to model thoroughly because, at the one hand, you have a vendor where you can say very clearly, okay, this is the cost to acquire their platform and to use it for these use cases. I'm just going to go with the open source route because it's free as in puppy. And so now it's going to cost me, several months worth of my engineer's time and, some untold thousands of dollars because of the fact that we have to reverse engineer it, integrate it with these other systems. And so I'm curious how you think about that cost modeling approach as you're debating this build versus buy process in terms of this tool selection, and then also weighing that against the maturity model of that tool or platform.
So I think like we also matured, like we were at some point. Like
Younger,
Yotpo,
we were younger.
yeah, we were younger and we were just using just open source. Like, what? No, don't use a managed solution at all.
We had a talk a few years ago. I think it was when Liran wanted to, we were deep into Hudi and everything was so bad. And I think it was when COVID started and we were working into night, we were Zooming together. We were so miserable. And then Liran said, forget about it. Let's just get something managed to do it right. Let's just do something else. And I was like, no, what are we like technicians? And I don't want to manage services. It's boring. What's left for us? Where's the rush and that? And no, managers is wonderful.
No, I think we get our rush today from other things. I think like working with this non-mature open source project or the open source projects that are not really fitting to what we need can be a real headache. And if it starts like this really cool way you do everything by yourself, it just ends up to being something very time consuming and very causing like a lot of fatigue to our team. So we're concentrating now on bringing like impact and value. If that means that we need to build our own tool, because I give it like an example right now. So we started rethinking about like data modeling. We talked about Bimetorico before, which is heavily used for data pipelines. And we wanted to move away from data pipelines into the data modeling world, because people were not like building data assets that last. Like they're building only their own ETLs, right? And not building like things that like people can reuse or they can build on top of them. They were not sharing knowledge, which I think is like what dbt is for. So we started looking at dbt, which is great. It's been heavily used by a lot of corporations around the world, right? But then like we thought like, whoa, this is like, there's like a lot of manual stuff to do here. A lot of stuff like that I don't really see people like enjoying. It has like a lot of things that you have to generate by yourself, like creating those metadata files or generating like sources, or like everything was like, seems like very complicated. So like, okay, maybe you can just, utilize Metorico and just, move it from the ETL world to data modeling world, which is like our own project. We have full control over it. But dbt comes like with a lot of different integrations, and like we have like the community, we can enjoy this. So this is like choosing like to build our own or using open source. And then we looked also with dbt management. We thought like, well, it doesn't provide us with the right, like, it doesn't give what we want. So we need to build our own. So we're actually now at this like stage where we're building like a lot. We have a team that's actually doing like a lot of stuff on top of dbt, but also like using dbt behind the scenes because it's like a standard way and it's been used in the industry. So this is like where we chose to build our stuff on top of open source, because there's not a really good managed solution. But like looking at like Absolver, for example, which is doing such an incredible job streaming data to the data lakes of the world, or like to data warehouses, like where I don't think there's any other solution. And we tried like everything. We did it with like Snowflake. We did it with Databricks. We did it with just our own Spark. Like they do it really, really well. And even like at the end, like it was cost optimized. Like they're like a premium solution, right? So we are like always like on the lookout of the best solution we can find. If we can, we can budget it, we'll probably buy it. If not, then we'll think about like creative ways, or just not do it right now. Just wait for the right moment or the right tool to come to our rescue. Like for example, like data catalog is one of those things where we're still like not sure what to buy or to build, because like there's a lot of coming up solution right now that are interesting, I guess.
We wanted to know Acryl data. We wanted to work with. You talked to Atlan. I don't know.
Yeah, Atlan as well, and Acryl data, and
we talked to every data catalog out there, I think. But also with dbt, like gives you some in the world of dbt. It gives you a basic, cool, nice generated catalog out of the box with lineage, and we really like it. And we also like considered in terms of like catalog and lineage. We talked about integrating open lineage, and I think we're not really confined to a certain approach of saying, okay, well, we're going all managed if possible, and otherwise. So we have this mix. And also I think like we always invest time in like trying out like new technologies and stuff out there, and getting to know like open source projects, so we can like stay up to date and know like what's out there. But eventually have this amount of bandwidth to handle these open sources and stuff that we build ourselves. And around every managed tool that we have, like Liran said, we automate stuff and we build this infrastructure around it. So there's always like our code wrapping whatever service we bring in.
It's not like managed solution will be like a free ride for us all. Like we still have a lot of work to do around managed.
They usually don't fit our needs. So
100% of them, the POC fails, but we get it working with it. So actually,
we have no other choice.
Yeah, no, but also like I think the ones we got working is we have like a good partnership with the people working there. So we had like we started with the POC with Okera, which doing like our data governance. But we work really closely with them, and we were able to make it work. And in the end, like we bought the solution, and it's a great solution for us. I don't think there's anything out there that resembles it, like because of the work we did together with them on our data platform.
Yeah, and also I think it turns out that a lot of the vendors that we chose to work with, we ended up being like true design partners building stuff together in a lot of the cases.
Yeah, I think they like us. I hope. No, like I think like because our platform is not like people that have like a lot of like better platforms that are just like Snowflake. Like it's great, right? It works really well, but ours is very complicated, and we know our stuff. Like we know how to deal with. We have like a lot of data engineering knowledge inside the team. So like we know what we want, we know what we need, and when we have like a really good vendor to work with, then it works really well. But again, it's not zero work. We have a lot of work on those POCs and afterwards like implementation and the self-service part. So
and we make mistakes and we go back and we try something else.
Yeah. So it's not like a clear cut, like where will we invest more? So I think like if I have to like summarize it, like we're just looking for the best solution out there. If it's open source, then open source. If it's a managed one, we use managed, and maybe we'll just build our own, which is also something that we do from time to time. So
definitely interesting, sort of the specific flavor that you build up in an engineering team, that everything has to kind of fit into that, or you have to make it fit. And you talk about DBT puts me in mind of what the folks at Shopify did with their adoption of DBT for building their cloud data warehouses, where they built this wrapper around it to enable CI/CD workflows and make it fit their specific engineering patterns.
I think everyone is doing it. Like, I think something is missing inside DBT. Like, everyone is not able to use it like just out of the box. And I think like that's a problem. Like, because like the amount of work that we're doing around it is like not like I really wished it was part of the solution. By the way, we might open source it as well, like because like we did like a lot of work, and so I hope that we can contribute. Yoda.
Another thing that you mentioned is that you work to stay up to date with the different tools and systems that are out there. And I'm wondering how you manage to simplify the process of experimentation so that you can get up and running with these systems, test it out, figure out what are the sharp edges, does it make sense, what are the gaps, and then make an easy and sort of quick decision of, yes, this makes sense to invest further in, or no, I'm not going to waste any further time, without getting to the point of I'm going to spend 2 months and become operationally excellent at this one tool just so I can see if it actually works.
I think usually by the time that I get to hear about something, it's after Liran tried it already, like locally. So that's how I get my stream.
That's not true. I think like we try to look for, we read a lot before we start investigating, because as I said, it's very costly to start like these POCs. So we try to better understand like if this solution works. I have a lot of talks with the vendor themselves and understanding like what they do, and talk to other companies that use them. Like we try to get as much information as we can before even starting to try it. But in the end, we try to create like a POC around a very specific use case, which is like solvable, and hopefully like based on documentation and what we heard, like is something that can work.
It's also something I think very, very important. Like a lot of these solutions, like we are a data lake solution. We do data lake, and we don't like this. We don't like these passwords. We usually have a very specific need that we want to solve. And I think that it makes us very focused around the POC and what we're trying to get. And on the other hand, it doesn't make things more complicated or vague, because, yeah, I want this for whatever this platform has to offer. Show me, I want to test out all the features. No, I'm approaching this with a very clear goal. And I think a lot of the tools that we're using today, we're using in a very specific part of the platform where their offering goes way further. And we choose to do this.
I'm thinking right now about a POC that we're not doing it. Like Doron is actually trying to avoid me of doing it, which is Rockset.
No, it's an option.
Yeah, we really. So Rockset is like this magical creature that exists.
That falls in love.
No, yeah, I really. They are selling.
It was Prefect before, and now it's Rockset.
No, yeah, I'm still with Prefect. But like their premise is super interesting. Like they're really promising to do something that no one else can, like based on their documentation and videos and the talks that I had with them. So I'm super intrigued to like see that in action. And so we actually like created like this use case for a POC, which like John just needs to set some time for, and hopefully like within a day or two we can like figure out if it actually does what it promised. So like that's I think what we're trying to achieve, like find these like very specific use cases, and we start small, like just what we did with Snowflake. We start with something small. We tried to assess if that works for us. We started in some kind of a production, very small production use case, and then we grow with it.
So the problem we want to solve is real-time analytics and how to enable real-time analytics, because we have analytics and we have real-time, but like because the data that we're dealing with is data that is normalized and using basically, like mostly we have CDC streams coming into the data lake. So we either have the CDC itself straight from Kafka, or we have the materialized table in the data lake. And then we have to do these tons of joins to get something coherent that people can use for B2B analytics, for example, or other use cases. But mostly it's some sort of B2B use case that needs this real time. So this is what we want to get, right? So one approach can be, let's use Rockset, and then let's put all the raw data in some database, and then we can query it live. So we can run our queries.
It can also be Druid, it can be Snowflake, it can be any database that can handle like large amounts of data and do aggregations in real time, right? So, but they promise to do something better, right?
Yeah, because we want like impressive performance. That's one way to go around this.
Why we like this approach, and we're actually just right now contemplating about if we actually want to go that way. But we really like that you don't have to decide anything in advance. So you just push it somewhere that you can later on just decide what you query on it, like just like a normal database. Then you can change your mind, which is great. Like I love being able to change my mind about schema. I like being able to change my mind about the query structure, about the joins, about like the amount of data that I'm querying. Like I love this type of solution. And then there's the other approach, right?
And this is because we know by now how difficult it is that you miss something and you want to add this data point, or the business logic is wrong, and then you have to build this whole stream again from beginning. And so we know how hard and expensive these things tend to be. So that's why this is like a valid option. And then we have to make sure that it connects with all the rest of the pipeline and how it's supposed to reach eventually whatever, if it's a dashboard or something, some other database that needs this data. So it's not perfect, right? So this is one option. Then another way going around is going the ETL way, right? And having these joins happening and modeling this data before it reaches destination and streaming this as a joined view into some storage layer. And this would go into the world of something like Kafka-based with like K-tables, K-streams, or maybe Flink or managed Flink or something from this part.
Yeah, we got also like Materialize there like as well, right? They also do the same kind of, and Absolver, by the way, as well. Like they do like streaming ETLs. Yeah.
So this is the problem. This is when we want to solve. This is like the technological spectrum that we can go around. Different approaches, different vendors. Like this is where we are now. And this happens every, like this big of a thing. So this happens like every, 6 months or something like that we have this process. And yeah, this is how it happens. We love it. It's fun. Like this is what the work is about, right?
Yeah.
In terms of your current architecture, I'm wondering if you can outline the key components and any of the early decisions that you made or some of the legacy systems that you had in place or that you needed to deal with that constrained your downstream options that led to the current state of the world.
First of all, I think we started off with Redshift. That was the first component, and we still have it, and we can't seem to get rid of it.
Yeah, I don't know why.
I know,
but just shut it down.
We just can't get rid of it. But I think that like the biggest decision that we made early on is to be data lake centric. And I remember when we started working with Snowflake for this B2B solution that we talked about, and then like we asked ourselves, should we go like all in for Snowflake? It'd probably be much easier for everyone around us, including us. No, we're going to keep the data lake approach. We're going to keep working with Spark, running our thing there. So I think that probably working on data lake and Spark based, it was like the biggest influence we have in the architecture. But by the way, we manage deprecations and migrations all the time. It's, I think, like 40% of our time, engineers are going about how are we going to migrate out of this into this. And it's not always like it can be a new technology, it can be a new methodology of doing things, and can be just because like new features are out and we can do stuff better and different, or we need to upgrade stuff or deprecate things that are no longer relevant. So it's something to consider. But yeah, Redshift is still here 6 months later.
I think like the way that we like do the decision making all the time is we really want to move forward all the time. So, and I think like you ask about like our points in time where like how do you make the decisions or like the key features that we added to the data. Like, and I think like it's always about like what's not working well for us, what can we improve, and how easy or difficult will be to deprecate like the old solution. And we always deal with this all the time. So I think like the key points was Data Lake and Spark. I think Databricks is like a huge choice.
We love.
Yeah, we love Databricks. Before we had like tons of different solutions. We had EMR, we had like the Jupyter notebooks, we had like everything. We did everything. We've been with Databricks for many years now, and it's just working well. And we run our own Spark clusters like from very, very, very early on. Like we're running them on HashiCorp's Nomad, we're running them on Kubernetes, running them like just by our own, like in EMR. But right now we're actually thinking about stopping all that and just using Databricks. Like they did such a good job with Photon that we just like, why not use it? Like they really did like this amazing work making Spark faster than it is. Why not like using what they're offering? Go manage. Yeah. So right now we're starting to think, how do we deprecate all those different Spark clusters where we started a different like architecture we built around Kubernetes and Nomad and just
do this without driving our users crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. We can do it maybe behind the scenes. Yeah. So like Databricks, one of the CDC, huge thing that happened in data platforms. Yeah. And also Absolver was like something that was very like a game changer for the entire data platform. And I think also like just if you go a bit back, like is Hive as well. Like I think like Hive Metastore. I think a lot of people are using right now like this like AWS solution, what's it called? Glue Catalog or like Databricks solution, or like we have our own Hive Metastore. It's great. I think
stupid and we love it.
It's really stupid. Yeah, it's stupid and we love it. Yes, I think that should be its motto. But so right now, I think that's going to be with DBT. I think that's going to be like really going to change the way we do data modeling, and also Delta Lake format, which is like after our experience with Hudi, we were like really like we don't want to touch formats for a while now. Let's just stop doing that. Like it's not really well. We also, by the way, we tested Delta at that time. It was not really mature, the open source version, and the only one we didn't test is Iceberg, which I heard the good things about, but. Right now, we're getting back to Delta, which is really much more mature. And I think this is also going to be like something that we're going to utilize more and more. I love their Z ordering feature that's also, again, working only in Databricks. But once we move to Databricks, we don't really care anymore. Like it's working well for us right now in our new data pipeline. So I think that's going to be a few things that are like important. And also, I think like the governance feature, Doron, so they came from like a necessary evil, right? Where we were like forced to create governance feature because of like compliance. But I like that we're safe. Like people don't have access to data that they don't need to see. And I think in the world of data lakes, it's really complicated. So yeah, I think that's also one thing important.
And if you were to throw everything away and start from scratch today, you have greenfield, completely new system. What are some of the things that you would do differently, or what would your ideal architecture look like?
Well, that's interesting. I would want like a fully stream architecture. Like I would remove batch altogether. But I have to say that 2022, I still don't feel comfortable doing this. Even if I were to create like a new data platform from scratch for a new company, like it still doesn't work well as it should. But I would really work hard to make it work and like make my users work harder to keep the platform happy, I guess, because like I think batch is like it's a problem. Like it's something that we need to remove. Like it's just like a very old school way of thinking, and it's driving like it
causes a lot of problems eventually. If we were to start everything all over again, we might like go through the same path, excluding the stuff that we threw away, but end up in the same place. But just knowing what we know today, we would have done things differently.
Yeah.
Like if we would have invested this much in self-service early on, you know what? I'm going to say something that I think I mean. Okay.
Okay.
In terms of governance, right? So you talked about access management. They have this whole part of data cataloging and stuff. I think that if something always gets pushed away, we never say, oh, it's important enough, let's stop doing this production thing because, we need access, we need a catalog, and we want lineage. So it always gets pushed aside. But I think that it can create a very good relationship working with data consumers and producers in an environment where they have observability to the data assets and they understand things much better, where the data comes from and where it goes to. So I want to be brave and say that if I start over again, I would like be like data catalog driven development.
Yeah. No. I think that's like what DBT is all about, right? It's like, it's like maintaining like documentation on your data.
And it's implicit. That's the thing that we like the most. It's implicit.
Yeah.
So you don't have to work this hard for a lot of the things that they can offer.
Yeah. I think, as I said, like, I think things are not perfect yet. Like, there's a lot of things to do. Like, I would want to see, by the way, DBT works in a streaming world, which will be amazing. Because I think SQL is like great and I want to keep it. Like, I think like by the way, you ask about like important choices. Like, we went with SQL all the way.
We were the first.
We were not the first, but like we at some point like stopped writing Scala and Python, like reducing like mostly like, data science, they love their Python. So go ahead. But like we tried to keep everyone working with SQL, even if it was a bit hard. At some point, like Spark added like a lot of different features to work better with SQL. But right now, SQL is great and it's winning. We interviewed someone from Meta on our podcast, and like in Facebook also, like it won. Like they're using like SQL quite a lot. Like all the data pipelines are written in SQL. So like I would want to see like the world of SQL gets merged into the world of like real-time analytics and real-time streaming. And I think that's where we're going to take our platform, but it's still not there yet. So like I won't say like I have like a perfect solution right now.
Yeah, you're talking about the future and not the past. You like the past as it was. It was a journey. We need to do it. We need to have this journey happen.
Yeah, but also like I think things are so much easier today in the data platform engineering world. Like it's like when we started it, like
2016, 2015. It's a long time ago.
It's a very long, like they were like missing like a lot of things that are people are like taking for granted today. And I think like we had to pass like a lot of different like architectures and solutions to get to where we are right now. But that was not your question, but I'm reminiscing. So
yeah, I started this podcast in the beginning of 2017, and in that time span, everything has changed drastically. Like I barely even recognize the things that I talked about at that point. I mean, some of them are still around, but there was a lot of stuff that it was like, oh, let's dig into the Hadoop ecosystem and interview somebody from there, and that's just not even a thing anymore. It is, but not really.
Yeah, you'll find someone in that data center like below, below the ground. You can talk about Hadoop with. So yeah.
Now that you have a functional data platform that is obviously constantly evolving, but what are some of the most interesting or innovative or unexpected ways that you've seen it used by your downstream consumers?
I think that one use case we can mention, it's actually like a trend that started with the data platform and it actually grew way beyond it. It's our use of the Debezium, because we use the Debezium for CDC over the databases like we described before. And it actually caught people's eyes in Yotpo, and they started using it for outbox patterns. So now it's like a big thing for like inter-service communication in Yotpo, and they built amazing applications based on outbox, or whether it's like scheduling solutions, all kinds of very complex problems using this component. So that's something that we're really happy that we have integrated in. Terraform Kafka, like the use of Terraform in general, is something that we adopted quite early on in our infrastructure.
Yeah, everything is like infrastructure as a code, like, and we are working really hard to like, by the way, that's like one of the things we do, like when we select like a tool is like see that we can do that. And if not, we just build a solution around it to make sure that it's possible, because doing like drag and drop in the UI, that's great for like a small startup, but like a company with, 1,000 people right now is just getting way too much complicated and things are just, missing. But I would say I think it's unique that our support engineers use the data lake. They can debug like features and debug like issues with our customers directly on top of the data lake, which is, I don't think a lot of companies are doing that. And they are investigating the data there and they're joining data and they're able to create like their own like reports and features and everything. So I think that's a kind of an interesting use case. I think like R&D in general is using like the platform a lot to do things that they're finding complicated to do in their own application infrastructure. Not always like the best decision, but like, yeah, at some point they're like, okay, we want to create this feature where we need like data from a lot of different places, and then we need to push it into Elasticsearch. All right, so do it like, event-based, do it like you normally do like software, right? But they're like, well, we don't have the time, we don't have the resources, we don't like deal with like this, like there's a lot of synchronization issues when you're dealing with like event-driven architecture. And they're like, let me just write these SQL joins, I'll run them every hour, every 10 minutes or whatever, and then push into, and they are using it for many years now. And they're building like a lot of these different features, just I think more quickly than they would if they had to do it like on the application side. Again, it's an example. I'm not thinking like I'm a huge fan of this because I think it's kind of like abusing the platform, but it's a use case and it's unique, I guess.
I also think that like, because we made big data accessible, which was not accessible at all before, and we have Metorico, which is really this just
enabler.
Yeah, it's a great enabler. It's just a plugin where you have all sorts of supported inputs and all sorts of supported outputs, which you can expand and add more and more. So like starting to use this big data to build small, cute features, loaded galleries, for example, where you listen to the click string coming in and you see whenever some consumer and end user is arriving at some gallery, at a product page or gallery page in some store, and then you can drive the data all through the admin side so that the store owner can see that someone is visiting the gallery at the moment. So it's all kind of nice features that people could just innovate and build for themselves.
We made like Spark structured streaming something that anyone can use and create within minutes, like their own data pipelines. And I think today they're not doing it anymore. Like they stopped doing these kind of features, but like
There's a new one that.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. So, but we had like innovation weeks and we created like a lot of these things. So I think like at that point where like structured streaming was like the thing. But since then, like we discovered that Spark structured streaming is not the greatest streaming architecture, like data in general, but it was very easy to integrate.
The most important piece of any data project is the data itself, which is why it is critical that your data source is high quality. PostHog is your all-in-one product analytics suite including product analysis, user funnels, feature flags, experimentation, and it's open source so you can host it yourself or let them do it for you. You have full control over your data, and their plugin system lets you integrate with all of your other data tools, including data warehouses and SaaS platforms. Give it a try today with their generous free tier at dataengineeringpodcast.com/posthog.
And so in terms of your own experiences of going through this journey of iteratively and exploratively building this new platform and working with your end consumers to shape the direction and the feature set, what are some of the most interesting or unexpected or challenging lessons that you learned in the process?
We talked about this before about like self-service, but I think like one of the discoveries that like we've made is, and I think that's like a journey that we've made internally, is treating our customers with respect, I would say. Like if at the beginning we were like this really technical team where people like, oh yeah, big data, I'm just doing all these really cool stuff. And like, oh, just use it. Like it's so easy and so cool. Oh, you can't use it or you're stupid. And I think that was like the approach. And I think it's like a lot of infrastructure teams around the world.
Did you
like,
read the logs? Did you read the logs?
Why did you read the logs? Why aren't
Spark
you?
logs. No one
Yeah,
can read them.
no one can read them. Yeah, but like we were like, well, it's so easy to. Oh, you got like an executor, like you lost executor because of memory. Like, how did you miss it? Like, oh, you're so lame because you're just like this normal developer, not like amazing like us, which is like. I think like infrastructure teams in general have this disease of thinking they're above everybody else. But I think what we like this thing that changed, and I think that's what we learned is like there's so many different types of developers and so many different types of people are in an organization that you know they can be really good at something but not really good at like this specific thing. And the fact that we like really like infrastructure doesn't mean everybody likes it, and doesn't mean everyone can orient around in it. Like they're frightened by it because it's like it's something that they don't know, and been living with this for the last 6 years, Doron for 10 years. So like for us it's like so obvious like how to use the system and how to utilize it and how to understand it. And now we're switching like our approach and thinking about them like first. And why is it not so easy? Why are those logs? Like, why do they even need to read the logs? Why can't we translate it into something that they can understand? And not because they're stupid, just because like they do something else. They have a different role than us.
And they don't have the capacity to learn this.
Yes,
and they don't necessarily want to learn this.
They really don't want to, and it's fine. Like, and I think that's really big lesson for us. Like,
I think what you're saying is basically, as you said before, we're building products and we have users. And I think that one of the like things that are more challenging for us is that we're also, the tech leads building our own roadmap, and we're our own product managers designing our product. And we are also the developers building this infrastructure. And I think that being all this under one roof and small teams, it's something itself very, very challenging.
And that does bring up the question of how you approach the sort of customer education as you're selecting these different tools and integrating them together and figuring out what does the workflow, what is the user experience, how you actually approach the education and onboarding of the different users in the organization to make sure that they are able to effectively take advantage of the tools and capabilities that you're providing.
This is a work in progress. So people from Yotpo listening, do you want to talk about Backstage? If that's what you want to talk about?
Also, I think, Backstage is a cool example. But like, I think in general, like, first of all, it's about like culture and it's like partnerships. Like we try to get them on board as quickly as possible before we build these like spaceships, right? And get them as part of the design partners and get them like in their conversation and discussions and ask them what they need and not what we want to build and like what's cool. Like we stop asking ourselves this question, asking, and I think it's an important part because then once we get to the education stage you just talked about, it's not that hard. Like we already have an advocate on their side. Like there's someone there that's like part of the project from the beginning and he can do that or they can do that. Like they can explain like the project and why it's really good. And so, yeah, in terms of like education, like we do like these sessions, we have like recorded video sessions, we have like a lot of documentation.
And also like self-service, like Jenkins pipelines or bots or whatever, also tooling that like helps them automate stuff.
Yeah, whatever we can automate, we're trying to do right now. And not by education, but just by, automating. Simplifying it and not by explaining it. Doron just said that like Backstage, I think where we're going to see like the next generation of education, like internal education, because Backstage is like this really cool enabler. So Backstage, it's like a project by Spotify. It's a really cool project and it's very extensible. It has a lot of different plugins. We started implementing it at Yotpo like a couple of months ago. It's been really successful. And part of it is like the centralized documentation feature, generators, and of course, just like this knowledge just there, you don't have to ask people questions like what the different services, different parts, APIs, like everything that a service can expose is there.
It's making portals cool again, right?
Yeah. No, by the way, it looks really bad. I don't know if you've seen it lately. Again, we're using Rody, managed backstage solution, just because like we don't really care about like it's good enough. Like we want someone else to manage it. Like again, we chose like a manage just because it's easier for us to implement. But I think that's going to be like a really great way to push like education and allow them to like onboarding process, make it easier. And this is going to be, I hope it's going to be great.
As you continue to build and iterate on your platform, what are some of the things you have planned for the near to medium term, or any particular projects or POCs that you're excited to dig into?
So I think we discussed a few, right? We talked about the real time. That's a big issue for us. We talk about governance, and the biggest project that we're working on currently is Yoda DBT-based project, which in our vision would basically mean like rewriting all of the data lake. So this is a big thing for us. And I think for the past a lot of months, we've been working around like migration from Nomad into Kubernetes. These are good examples of the diverse tasks that we have in our infra teams. It varies a lot.
I want to add something about Yoda. Is that
it's Yotpo data applications?
Yotpo data applications, yes. So we are taking like a really cool approach there, and it kind of encapsulates like a lot of different things that we probably would have done outside, but like right now we're doing it as part of this project. So we look at data modeling in the beginning, and we started talking about like how do you create a model and how do you write it and how do you document it, but also like how do you test it? And I think that's one of the things that are really missing right now in like a lot of different places in the world in data is like testing. So we're going to do a lot of work around testing here. So I think everybody has like started doing like tests, right? But we were probably the first to do it. Like with Metodico's we have like unit tests on data pipelines from the beginning. We had like a DQ test, like as part of the like data pipelines test, like for a very long time. So we're doing the same there, but we're trying to like rethinking about how do you test a pipeline properly without affecting production. So using all these different, like using like great expectations and with like FS, so you can do like append data pipelines without actually affecting production and making sure that everything works great, or, collectively update a bunch of data pipelines all together with Lake FS, which is also like a really cool, you can test like a lot of different pipelines together, like as part of a single process.
You know what Lake FS is?
Yes, I've actually had them on the podcast a little while ago.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, yeah, we love them. So like these are the things that we're running, but also like how do you test locally? I don't think it's been answered. Like DB took the approach of like, oh, you have like production data, you can do it, but sometimes the data is so big, like how can you run? You're going to run it in dev, you're going to rebuild the entire data lake on your dev environment. Like that's not possible. So like doing like these mocks and like different like auto-generated sources and creating something small, like a smaller world. So you can do like unit testing or integration testing. So we're really into that. And that's also part of the dev process. And
the data CI/CD in general is a topic. It's a real topic for us.
Yeah, I think we're doing like a lot there, but also like taking like end-to-end approach with data applications. So it's not just about creating a pipeline. That's great. And now data is in the data lake and people can use it. That's a really huge step. But how do we get that accessible to people that have no access to SQL? Like they don't really know how to access data. We want them to have also access to data. Like if someone modeled something, invested a lot of time in modeling, why not have that data already exposed to people around the organization that are like from finance or higher management? So we're working also with DBT to expose it in Looker or in some other dashboard so they can drag and drop data. But because that data was heavily tested, it's documented, it was like built by someone that understands the domain, that person can trust it and they can drag and drop like whatever they want. They don't even need like an analyst with them to make sure that they understand, because it's all self-explanatory. Like data is self-explanatory. So I think like that project like encapsulates like a lot of the future of how we see our data platform evolves.
Yeah, it's like true self-service analytics. It's also about like shipping it at the shortest cycles possible with like smoothing out all the friction that you have when you are developing, testing, and deploying.
And consuming.
Yeah, because everything we talked about until now, most of what we talked about, it's around people that know SQL and they self-serve themselves around, well, yeah, you have Databricks, so it will work. But we talked about 500 people. There's at least 500 more. They would love to work with self-service analytics and think of a world where there's a new feature. And as they're building this feature, there's a developer that's building the DBT model alongside the feature. They can release it right after data is starting to get generated. And in the CD, we automatically create this explorer that the product manager can access and see the metrics flowing in. That's wild, I think.
Yeah, it's going to be wild.
Well, for anybody who wants to get in touch with you and follow along with the work that you're each doing, I'll have you add your preferred contact information to the show notes. And as a final question, I'd like to get your perspectives on what you see as being the biggest gap in the tooling or technology that's available for data management today.
I think we kind of mentioned it before, but like our problems today are around like good real-time analytics solutions and this whole thing around governance. We don't see it solved yet. Like we have many different solutions, all like covering just a part of what data governance is about. And then you have all this overlap between the tools and they all cost so much and you don't want to buy those $200K solutions and have all this mashed together. So yeah, that's what bothers me.
I think, so I agree, definitely. I think for me is like, I'm thinking like we're this team of right now around 9 people doing this work all the time. And like every company is doing the same with like less people or more people or sometimes 10 times more people. And it just sounds crazy that everybody's like doing the same thing. And they all keeping people that are not really directly contributing to the business aspect of like their companies, like doing infrastructure. We might as well be working in any other company right now. Like we're not doing anything like that's Yotpo specific, but we're doing it for Yotpo because like we know like what's good for Yotpo, we know what it needs. But so I think like it became so complicated like this era. Like before it was just there was nothing, or like there's data warehouses where we're locked within them and then you couldn't do anything like outside. And right now it's just like this wild west of tools and you need a lot of people to manage this. So I would like something to unify them all together or to make them work like better, like so you don't have to keep like on payroll so many people that they're doing the same job for different companies.
You want us all fired?
Yes, in general.
What about our job security?
No, I think like that's what's missing. It's just too chaotic right now. Yeah, and everything else Doron said.
I really like the episode that you had to summarize last year. You had this panel, and I think we really related to the stuff that you guys were talking about, like what's going on in the domain out there and how solutions look like. Yeah, I think it's a really interesting topic to see like how the ecosystem evolves over time and what solutions are getting born and which sticks and stays. And yeah, it's really interesting.
Also, by the way, I'm adding to my answer that like I think like data trust is still like not solved. Like I think like there's still a long way to go there, like to have better automation around like understanding errors in our data and like something that's more like hands-off approach. And I think like Monte Carlo is on the right track, but like I think it's still like there's a long way to go there.
But those companies are mostly focused on the masses. Like, and the masses don't do what we do.
Yeah.
So we always get like pushed aside, and it takes time until they get there to what we're doing, and then we build something crappy by then. And yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for taking the time today to join me and share the work that you've both been doing at Yotpo and building out this data platform architecture and taking the time to share your experiences around that. It's always a valuable view into all of the processes that go into actually building and managing and running these systems. And it's a process that I'm going through myself as well. So appreciate all of the insight you've been able to share. And I hope you each enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Tobias.
Thank you, Tobias.
Listening. Don't forget to check out our other show, podcast.init, at pythonpodcast.com to learn about the Python language, its community, and the innovative ways it is being used. And visit the site at dataengineeringpodcast.com to subscribe to the show, sign up for the mailing list, and read the show notes. If you've learned something or tried out a project from the show, then tell us about it. Email hosts@dataengineeringpodcast.com with your story. And to help other people find the show, please leave a review on iTunes and tell your friends and coworkers.